So with that, I want to introduce our speaker, Meredith Hoggatt from Virginia Cooperative Extension. I know my family has benefited from a number of cooperative extension programs, but I'm sure that there's a lot that I don't know about it too. So I will turn that over to her. And sorry, one more thing I forgot to mention, that those of you who are online, if you could just let me know in the chat that you can hear us, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. If I can get situated here. And do it record. Yeah. Okay.
Like Ann said, my name is Meredith Hoggatt, and I'm the Ag and Natural Resources Extension Agent for Montgomery County. I'm also the unit coordinator, but I'm here to pretty much tell you all what Virginia Cooperative Extension does, and a little more specifically focusing on some of the programs that we have here in Montgomery County, because it's different from county to county, as you'll see. But I did want to highlight some of our great people who work in our office. Kendra Young is our 4-H agent. She does our youth development programs. Dawn Barnes is in Floyd as well, but she is our FCS, or Family Consumer Sciences agent. Wendy Silverman is our Master Gardener Coordinator for all of the NRV. Lisa Miller is our 4-H program assistant. Angie Helm, which I believe is online right now, she was our FMP facilitator, but she's actually taken another position. So that's Family Nutrition Program Facilitator. And I'll go through all of these programs too, so that y'all know what this means. She's actually taken another position in Roanoke, but we'll still be working with our area, fortunately, because we loved having her in our office. And then Margarita Palomino is our administrative and technical associate. So she is the one that if you call her office, she's probably the one that you're going to speak to first, and she'll send you to the right person to answer your questions. So let's see if I can get this guy to work here. Maybe not. There we go. We're getting there. Oh, okay. There we go. So a lot of times extension, we like to do what we call connection before content. And this just kind of helps answer some questions we might have about you all, but then you can see amongst yourselves some things that kind of connect. But so just by a show of hands, how many of you all have heard of Virginia Cooperative Extension? Okay, yeah, that's good. A lot of times it doesn't look like that in the room, unfortunately. And then how many of you have attended an actual Virginia Cooperative Extension program? And that could be across any of those areas as we talked about.
The bear one.
Yeah, so Master Naturalist is a part through Virginia Cooperative Extension. So I would expect, especially with this group, that it would be mainly people kind of doing some Master Gardener programs or events, Master Naturalists, maybe some of our ag workshops that you might not think would be ag, but they are. But yeah, I'm glad to see at least a couple of hands there. So what is Virginia Cooperative Extension? So VCE is found in all of the counties across the state. So it's not just here, it is everywhere. There's usually 3 main agent areas across these states or across these counties. So there's usually the 4-H side, which is our youth development, ag and natural resources, and then family and consumer sciences. Now, in some of these counties, we have some different agents that might be more specialists in a bigger area. But those are usually found in each county. And officially, Virginia Cooperative Extension began in 1914 with the Smith-Lever Act with our land grant universities. So VCE is actually a collaborative educational outreach program between Virginia's 2 land grant universities. So that's Virginia Tech as well as Virginia State University. And then our big thing is to offer science and research-based information and solutions for anyone in Virginia. So what is our mission? This is really difficult because we do a lot across all of our programs, but overall, I'd say it's to increase the well-being of Virginia. It's super vague, right? I know, like, people are like, well, what does that mean? But it's really a true statement because we provide a lot of different services across a broad array of programs, and we can provide a lot of different resources for county citizens. So today we're going to kind of highlight some of those programs, and I tried to kind of tailor it towards the sustainability aspect of things. But I am going to touch on other programs just so that you all have an idea of what we all do in our office. So just quickly, some 4-H highlights. 4-H is our youth development program. They're our future, right? So we try to get in as early as possible to do some educational workshops, in-school clubs. They have out-of-school clubs, community clubs, all kinds of programs. So here are just a couple that we're going to go through real quick to highlight some of the programs that we do. This is probably one of the most popular programs, our embryology program. And this gives students the opportunity to incubate and hatch out poultry eggs. Usually they're chickens, but as you can see in this picture, some of them end up being little ducklings. We also have some quail. The button quail were adorable. We always actually hatch out some in our office just in case the classrooms might have some failures, which we actually have a really good survival rate with our hatchlings. Thankfully, our assistant 4-H agent, Lisa, is great with this. She gives very good instructions for the teachers to help with this. These are numbers from 2023, just because we just got in our reports for 2024. But we had 30 teachers in 8 elementary schools across the county participate. Most of them are second graders. Some have some first and kindergarten classes participating. But overall, that's about 505 students that get exposure to the incubation process and hatching out of these poultry. So once we hatch them out, they actually usually go back to farms that are nearby that either have donated and would like them back. Sometimes they'll donate some of the fertile eggs and they're like, just give them to another producer who wants to use them for egg production or whatever. So it's a lot of fun. Last year, we actually did like a little live stream in our office when we had some hatching out, because you can tell there's usually a couple-day window that you know they're going to hatch as long as you've done it correctly. So it's really fun to watch. We love to have them in our office. So another really big program that we do with 4-H is actually a collaborative program we do with Pulaski, Giles, Floyd, and Craig County as well. And it's Junior Hokie Showcase. So we have this for 4th graders across the NRV. And usually we have 12 stations, all relating to different parts of agriculture. So that could be horticulture, where we dissect flowers and look at the reproductive structures and explain how an ovary gets pollinated and becomes a fruit. And then we also have other areas, such as we have the poultry that we talk about. We have a natural resources activity that we do, focusing on trees and identifying different trees. We'll have some that are looking at populations, so looking at deer versus predator populations as well. Then we have our dairy mobile, which a lot of people love. They get to see an actual dairy cow come in and learn about the dairy process. But over 750 youth get to participate in this. And this was when a year that Pulaski wasn't able to make it due to school cancellation. So it gets closer to about 1,000 students that go through in 1 week and go through all of these stations. We like to give our teachers some surveys to make sure that we're providing information that is also helping our school system. And they said that 95% said that the event correlates well with the 4th grade SOLs. So they get exposure to different livestock, all kinds of different things that ag involved are involved with. So byproducts as well. And a lot of students have like parents that come as chaperones, and sometimes you find that they learn just as much as the students themselves. So it's a really great program that we love to participate in. And all of the extension offices have a lot of their own office folks that are helping with this event as well. So this was a program we did in 2023, and this is one that actually 4-H, so A&R, so Ag and Natural Resources, and then Family and Consumer Sciences, we worked together on this, and this was growing our future youth entrepreneurs. We provided 7 learning sessions throughout the year and had participants come to these. So those were teens, and it was looking at starting their own business and selling at the farmers market. So with these classes, we started with looking at product development, seeing what was already at the market. Is there a need for your product? And this could be something as from, selling flowers or eggs to, as you can see, some here, baked goods, some stuffed animals, which I have a lot of little stuffed animals that I bought from this, scrunchies, all kinds of different projects. But they went through, learned about pricing, marketing of their product, kind of funding and launching their business. And then they were able to actually come to the Christiansburg Farmers Market and set up as vendors and sell their products. We had a lot of different, you can see here, some of the different products that they sold. And we had a really great, successful program with these folks. Their parents, and we even saw a difference in them from the beginning, even in their way they addressed the public. You could tell at first they were a little nervous. They didn't really want to engage with their customers. By the end of it, some of the quietest ones were the ones that were kind of out there really, telling people about their product, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So FCS, I've mentioned with Don Barnes, this is Family and Consumer Sciences. Just to highlight some of what they did in 2023. So they had 16 citizens participate in hands-on canning workshops to learn about USDA procedures. And then additional 6 citizens had their canner pressure gauges calibrated, and 2 of those actually needed to be replaced. So that's something that we offer as a service. You can come in with your pressure canner tops, and make sure that your gauges are working properly. Because if they're not, right, that could be a food safety issue. So just showing some of these that they had 2 of them replaced, that's over 200 jars of product that would have been at risk that they had already used that canner with. FCS also does our Safe Serve training courses. So this is recognized by the Virginia Department of Health as meeting the requirements to be certified food production manager. So we have lots of people from the restaurant business come in, hospitals, schools that take this training. And it covers food safety concepts such as sanitation, food storage, pest management, safe food handling practices. So these are the numbers for 2023. We had 30 participants that attended in Montgomery County with 80% pass rate, and 6 participants attended a class that was actually taught in Spanish. 4 of them passed the exam themselves too. So we offer in English and in Spanish for those courses. And then they also do some wellness fairs. So Extension, we usually do 3 wellness fairs. And this is just sharing information that relates to healthy lifestyles. So lowering your salt and sugar intake, and using or growing your own herbs, different ways to kind of switch out some of those products so that you're not getting too much of the salt and sugar intake. So FNP, I mentioned earlier, Family and Nutrition Program. So currently this is an open position. I don't think we're going to have anyone fill it anytime soon, unfortunately, but at some point we will get someone to replace Angie. So what is FNP? This provides nutrition and healthy lifestyle education to limited resource Virginians. So it's funded by Federal Supplementation Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP-Ed, and the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program grants. So you might see some things that are labeled Eat Smart, Move More. That's their curriculum that they use. And it consists of 4 to 8 sessions of evidence-based eating smart, be active curriculum. So there are some eligibility requirements to be able to take these programs, but participants get to learn about making healthy choices within their budgets, gain valuable food prep skills, and discover ways to be more active. They also all get this kit of supplies too when they complete the course. And then this is just some of the classes that Angie was able to do in 2023, some of her impacts. So saw an 88% improvement in food resource management practices, 95% improved food safety practices. And then that's providing over 1,000 clients with short-term face-to-face education through events and individual lessons as well. I like this. This is a picture of Angie, actually. I love this picture. But she had a participant in the grocery store showed me her shopping cart and said, I can make meals with real food instead of using boxed meals, which I think is really important. And then ag and natural resources. So this is my area. I did quickly want to just kind of introduce, because I think it's important to know about your county. And when it comes to agriculture, knowing what's there. So this is just an overview of NRV Ag, the number of farms that we have, because a lot of people, when you talk about farms, they're kind of surprised that Montgomery County would have so many because they think of Blacksburg or just Christiansburg, but we have Reiner, Elliston, Shawsville, we have all these other rural areas. So we have over 580 farms in our county, and the average size is a little under 200 acres. So they're not huge. Along with the state of Virginia, our actual percentage of family farms is 98% are small family farms. So this kind of fits in with that. This is 80 or 96% that are family farms. Here, our number one commodity is livestock. And that's true for all of the NRV. Beef cattle is the number one over all of the NRV, and that a lot of that has to do with our landscape, right? We have a lot of hills, a lot of rocks. It's not the best place for crops, but livestock can kind of take advantage of those hilly areas that we can't plant on and can't grow food on. So we just grow it in a different way. And then our second highest commodity for livestock is actually dairy, even though it's very small. It used to be a lot larger, kind of continually start to see that decreasing. And then some small ruminants as well. And then crops, we have hay as our number one crop in Giles and Pulaski. Here it's actually grains, which is a little bit different for the NRV. But then we have our number 2 spot for Montgomery County as being nursery or greenhouse or floriculture, which I'm sure you guys know a few of our vegetable production farms that we have here. So we're lucky to have those guys. And then, yeah, our hay is also a big commodity as well. And then I like to mention homesteading because this has become more and more popular since COVID. More people are wanting to know where their food comes from, so they're more interested in growing their own food. So we've been focusing more on some homesteading types of programs for really small scale ag. And most of these pictures are actually from our own farm. Well, we have a farm, I do personally, but the poultry here is actually from my backyard for just backyard broiler production. We don't have a very big backyard, but it's enough to where I can do a chicken tractor and we can put 25 chickens in our freezer each year. So looking at vegetable production, canning, egg production as well. And then I'm not going to go through all of this, but I did want to highlight some of it. I took some slides from some other presentations, but as far as producers, I do work mainly with commercial producers in the area. I like to know what people actually need instead of guessing what they need or making assumptions of what they need. So I give out a producer survey asking, circle your top 4 areas of interest. And so based on that is what I base my programming on throughout the year. So you can see some of the things we've done in the past for our actual ag producers. One of the biggest ones is weeds, and that's for anyone. That can be livestock producers, that can be vegetable producers, that could be anyone in this room, probably, if you have your own garden. A lot of folks really want to know about weeds. So these are just some of the some more programs that we've done in the past. Another one that came up last year was that backyard chicken basics. And that was actually in response to the egg prices, because as soon as people see the egg prices start to hike up, they think, I should just get my own chickens. It'll be cheaper than paying $10 at the store for eggs. This was in response to make sure they realize the actual inputs it takes to raise those chickens and those eggs, because sometimes I think people think it is cheaper. I have chickens. I'm a crazy chicken lady. Trust me, I know I'm wasting my money. I am not saving money by raising my own. And there's a lot more that goes into it than just feeding them, giving them water, and letting them lay eggs for you. There's lots of predator issues around here. So this program was more to show people all of the considerations before jumping off into the crazy chicken person area. I know it's really tempting, but I've spoken with folks that sell chicks, and then they have people who buy them thinking, yes, I'm going to save money, or this is going to be easy. And then they try to bring them back and don't understand that they can't take those chickens back. So that's a biosecurity issue. So this was just one of those programs, making sure people knew what they were going to get into before going into it. So we do all kinds of different programs. Some other general citizen programs that we do. So it's not, I don't just work for producers, right? So we mentioned the chicken basics. We also, has anyone heard of the well water clinics? Yes. So we, throughout the state, we have our water quality program. And if you have a well, you can get some well testing done. And usually it's done around March, April, May here. But right now we're actually in kind of a limbo. They have some staffing going on, so we don't really know when it's going to be this year. But it's an annual event that if you have a well, you can sign up for it, get your well tested so that you know what's in your water, and if you need to do anything to make sure that's safe for you. We also do some pollinator walks, native landscaping. We love our natives, right? We want to plant more of them, so people want to know about what can I plant that's easy to maintain, or good for my area. So we've had Ian from Wood Thrush come up and do some talks on those. Hokey Bug Fest. Has anyone here been to one of those? Not just for kids. It is super fun. It's one of my favorite programs to participate in. I'm a big insect nerd. I actually will take a bumblebee hive, a commercial bumblebee hive, and allow people to see inside of it. So it's a live hive, and explain how bumblebees actually have a really big impact on our vegetable production. So if you're eating any tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, eggplant from the grocery store, most of those are in big greenhouses, and those are pollinated by bumblebees. No offense to honeybees, but they always get all the attention. Our bumblebees are native, and they also do a lot for us in the food system. So I always like to highlight that. And then some bucket gardening workshops, which I'll highlight a little more in a minute. And then just some general A&R services. This is not just for farmers either. So soil testing, that's probably one of my favorite things to always push. If you have a garden, if you're having landscape issues or lawn issues, soil is the place to start. That's the foundation of anything that's growing around your home, whether that's ornamental plants or some vegetable production or crops. So we do soil testing. It's $10 for homeowners per sample. You come by our office, get the boxes, submit them. You can drop them off at our office if you want to avoid campus and parking. So we're actually in the Montgomery County Government Center, and we will drop them off at the soils lab for you. And then we'll follow up with you if you have questions on the results of those. We also offer hay and forage testing for our producers. There's a huge issue across the state is the quality of hay. and what they're feeding their livestock. Some of that is unavoidable because some of it is the weather when they're trying to get their hay up. But we like to really stress testing that so they know the nutrition of their forage that they're feeding. Then we also do pest and disease identification and diagnostics. So that can be, you might have an insect. We'll just go with this one right here. Does anyone know what that is? This guy? What was that? A bug, yeah. So, I always like to point this one out because this is a question that I will get calls about. And I used to work in Wyoming and I'd get calls about this too. They'd say, I have this pest, I need to kill them, they're on my trees. And I come out and it's this. This is actually a ladybug larvae, not a bad guy. You don't want to be killing that. So I was glad that they called me out there. I went and I was like, oh, these are actually good beneficial insects. But if there's a lot of these here, that probably means you have aphids somewhere. And sure enough, up a little further, there were aphids in their leaves, but they didn't even think about those. So we can help with identifying pests or beneficials, whatever you think you may have. It's always good to identify it first before you do anything because you could be killing something that's actually helping you. And then diseases as well. So if you have some issues like over here, this was on some of my sister's cucumbers last year. Anybody have a guess of what that could be if you're a gardener? It's downy mildew. And each year it kind of seems to be appearing sooner than it usually is. And it's one of those things you can't do much once you get it. So it's an early detection type thing so that you can remove the affected leaves so that it doesn't continue spreading. But yeah, we have lots of different things that we can help with identifying. This one over here is always really popular, not the murder hornet, right? Everyone will usually send in a lot of pictures of that and they're worried. They're like, it's here, but luckily we don't really have any issues with those. They haven't been seen in a long time. And when they were, it was over in Washington. But these are the European hornets, very common here. And it's usually around the same time as well. What were you pointing? This one?
Yeah, what is it?
Have you guys seen this recently? This is the easiest time of year to see this one right here. That's a bagworm. So they will create these little sleeping bags almost. And this is the time to get them before they emerge when it gets warmer. And it's also nice because this is when they're easily seen because there's not foliage everywhere. This is actually outside of the Montgomery County Government Center. There's a juniper, I believe they have on the back of the building, completely coated. And I'm like, hey, you might want to do something about these before they all emerge. Yeah, you can just take them and stomp them if you want because they're just the larvae are inside of there. It's a bagworm is what they're called. Yeah. A lot of times they're not going to completely kill out a plant, but it's going to make it not look pretty. And a lot of people like their plants to look pretty. So, and then that's from where we took some hay samples too, just so that you know. We also help with farm business planning, which is really important to make sure that our producers are doing well. As far as sustainability in ag, so this is something that I've done for there's a class that actually focuses on this at Tech. And kind of like, okay, how do you approach sustainability in ag? And I like to cover this because sometimes we get stuck in our own way of thinking. So it's good to kind of look at a bigger, broader picture. So I always like to remind people, sustainability is not an all or nothing concept, right? If we think of it that way, we probably would get nowhere. Usually want to get people involved in different aspects. And sometimes there's different motivators of what will get them into thinking more sustainably, right? So it's an environmental, economic, and social concept that goes across all of these areas. So extension, we like to provide research-based information, and that's to help producers adopt more sustainable practices. So this could be some technical support of how like maybe they want to do daily rotational grazing or more managed grazing. So doesn't have to be daily. It could be once a week. That's going to be better than just continuous grazing the whole time. So I always have to say that we have to meet people where they are because we all have different resources. And that could be financial resources, that could be labor resources, that could be physical resources, like our physical limitations. The average age of our producer in Virginia is 59, 60, kind of goes between 58 to 60 or so. So there's a lot of issues there with some physical limitations. So that's one thing that I always like to mention. But we do have a lot of great producers here that will participate in more managed grazing. They're very open to what they're applying or how they're managing their land. And that's really what it is. A lot of it is just managing. If you're doing a good job managing, or if you're not putting what you need to into that management. So one thing that I wanted to highlight that Virginia Tech has been working on with VCE, and then we have this program team called Grace 300, is looking at some of the biggest challenges facing sustainability today. And this is a really great example of some of that. And some of this is personal. This isn't like these little bullets right here are not necessarily like research. These are more of what I've seen in my position. But a lot of it is just kind of like the human brain being a barrier itself. What people see as being a barrier, what versus what might actually be the barrier. Some of it is financial stability to take extra risks. Farming, I'm sure most of you know, is not the most it's not the most stable profession as far as returns on investment. There is a lot of risk, and it's not just financial risk. I mean, the weather, we had drought, and then what have we had this past fall and now in February? We had a hurricane, and then we actually suffered more damage from this ice and flooding event in February than we did from the hurricane as far as ag damage. So for this last one, just within the first few days, we do ag damage assessments as well as A&R agents for our counties. And we saw over $300,000 just in fencing loss. That's not including the 3 or 4 emails that I got this week that are increasing that. So there's weather is unpredictable. It's getting even more so. So that's some of it too. Yeah. Yeah, and it's usually different pockets. It's funny that the hurricane hit different areas as far as the flooding than this go around. So this one, Ellett Valley got hit really hard as far as flooding. I think Tom's Creek had quite a bit of flooding out that way. So it's interesting to see the differences in what locations were affected in each of those times. But yeah, tree damage, and like when you're talking about, master naturalists, things like that, making sure you clear out stands that need to, like if you have those problem trees, those old dying trees, getting those out of there so that it lessens the amount of damage when you do have these types of events. Some of it's unavoidable, but there was a lot of tree damage, and that's mainly what happened with the fences as well. Back to kind of looking at this kind of perceived barriers deal, they did a sociology study, which I was so excited to see because I'm someone who thinks that we can do more if we think about motivators of people and of change. So they did this project that was social science research on factors influencing farmers' attitudes toward the adoption of rotational grazing in Virginia. Mouthful of stuff. But essentially it's like, okay, why are not more people adopting these types of practices? Even though we can show them the data of you'll save money, you'll also save inputs or have better environmental impacts, things like that. So we can provide all that data, but people are still not changing. It's the same thing that, we know that Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kremes are not good for us to eat, right? But we still go out there and eat them. So there's different motivators for change. So they were looking at that. And they found the primary barriers, this list over here, which if you talk to someone in Extension who's an A&R agent, a lot of us were like, but these aren't real barriers. But to them in their mind, they are, and that's what we have to work with. So that's kind of helping us reshape how we approach kind of introducing some of this information to folks. And I think it's just one of those things that's across all people, right? Sometimes we focus on the wrong things. And I think sometimes with research, we get so embedded in the data and providing that we don't think about the other motivators out there. My dad is a producer. He's 9th generation. His biggest motivator right now is my daughter. And that I'm actually seeing a lot. Like a lot of it has to do with the next generation. It's not necessarily money. It's not necessarily like certain things. It's I want it to be more sustainable so that my granddaughter can continue this when she's older. And so it's looking at things like that. So I think that's really important to think about when we think about sustainability in general too. People have different motivators, right? And sometimes it's the way we message and deliver some of those practices and that information to try to get people to change, because people will change. It's just, what are their motivators? So let's see, look at time here. I mentioned some of the environmental, economic, and social areas of looking at sustainability. Those are just some of the ways that we contribute to that. So we do IPM training, so integrated pest management training. And essentially that's focusing on doing everything you can before you need to go the chemical route. And that can be on livestock producers, that could be with school greenhouses, it could be commercial or in your own garden. Looking at cultural, mechanical practices, correct timing of pesticides. So I know a lot of folks don't like pesticides, but if we teach about correct timing, we're reducing the number or the amount of pesticides used. And that's helpful for many different reasons, right? Yes. So that's going to be like maybe choosing a different variety. Oh, yeah. Yes. So the question was cultural practices. What would be an example of that? So that's like choosing a variety that might be more resistant to an issue. So then you're not even having to worry about controlling that pest or disease later on. Or maybe planting at a time later that the pest isn't as big of an issue. One example of that, squash borer. How many of you, I mean, if you all garden, you probably have had an issue with some squash borer. Yeah. I found that I just wait a little longer before I even plant, so that they're not getting hit as hard with that. So there are different ways that you can kind of manipulate how you're planting, when you're planting. A lot of time we think of mechanical practices as, that's like removing things with water, like a jet stream of water, instead of using the chemical, or just physically going out and picking things off, things like that. Soil testing, I will always say, test your soil, test your soil. That helps because I have people, whether it's a garden or a producer, who will consistently reapply the same thing every year, no matter what, without testing. One, you're probably adding something that you don't need to. You're wasting your money and you're wasting your time. And you can also apply too much of something. You can have too much of a good thing. So nitrogen, if you add too much, you can actually burn your plants that way. So wood ash, I'm just going to put this out here because I've seen it, like a really great case of this. I had someone who had issues with their garden. They came back. They're like, I don't know what's going on. We took a soil sample. pH was 8.3. Insane. Usually it's low, right? Usually we need to add some lime to raise the pH up. It's really high. So we're going to need to do some sulfur applications to bring it back down to like our 6.5 range. I asked, like, have you been applying any fertilizers? No, I don't really apply anything. Then we continue talking and it comes out, well, I do put my wood ash. I empty my wood ash on the garden every single time. It was just non-stop wood ash. So that brought that pH up. So you can have too much of a good thing, because we think about wood ash not being a bad thing, but if you just keep adding it, it can be really bad. So that helps with those applications. Economic, so we can help looking at that. within our communities through education of efficient practices so that you're not wasting money with your soil amendments or whatever. We also look at the support of local organizations and farmers, and then collaborative efforts with NRV Thrive. So we like to partner with NRV Thrive. It's a network of networks in the NRV that focuses on food insecurity. And by working together, we can accomplish more, and I'll kind of touch on some of that. And then just that social awareness that your choices affect not only you, but your surrounding community as well. So here are some projects that we've done. Our bucket gardening workshop, we did this last year. We're actually going to be expanding this into a program that we just got a small grant for, that we're going to collaborate with 4-H, FCS, FMP, and then A&R to do this. We're going to focus this in Eastern Montgomery because that's our most underserved area of Montgomery County. But this past summer, we did this bucket gardening workshop where we went through just being able to plant and grow crops in a 5-gallon bucket, focusing on our large population of folks that rent apartments or rent houses that maybe they don't have a backyard. Maybe the backyard is not a great place to grow things, but just showing you can still grow your own food, even in just a 5-gallon bucket. We had 21 participants, and 100% of the people who took the survey, which I think were 10 of those, said that they were going to start growing. They had never grown anything, and now they felt like they could grow. So that was really encouraging. And then 100% of the participants who were renting also said that they were going to now try to grow their own food. And these pictures up here, actually, after the program in June, sent out a follow-up email to the participants to see, hey, can you send me some pictures of what you're growing? And from this program, we gave everyone 2 buckets. So they got to prepare their own buckets to grow at home with 2 seedlings. And then some people were like, hey, we took them home, they're doing great. And we expanded it. We went and got more buckets, and they're growing more food. So we are going to be doing that, expanding that into a 4-part series, including this part, the actual bucket gardening part. It's going to be called Grow It, Eat It, Keep It, Repeat It. So we've got the grow it part. We're going to have the next one where we're going to cook, do some demonstrations of some of the foods that they can prepare with the vegetables grown in those buckets. Then we're going to do a keep it, so some preservation methods. And that can be as easy as just not putting your tomatoes in the refrigerator. If you're doing that, stop. So it's from that to even how to freeze, what do you need to blanch before you freeze to preserve it. Touching on a little canning, but we're trying to keep it to where it's as low resource inputs as possible too. And then the repeat it is just going to be redoing that, but for cool season crops, because summer's not the only time you can grow. We can grow a lot in the fall as well. And then I wanted to highlight our Master Gardener free seed program. So this isn't for individuals per se, but it's for nonprofits, school garden projects, community gardens. Our Master Gardeners do some projects, so they do some through that. Plant clinics throughout the year. So if you see Master Gardeners at an event and they're giving out free seeds, that's part of it. But last year we had about close to 30,000 packets of seeds that were given out to the community. And these are the ones from the big box stores that when they expire, that expiration date on your seed packet, they throw them away. You can use seeds for 5-6 years after. You might need to do a germination test and then plant a little extra, but that's a waste. And that's $50,000 worth of seeds right there. So Wendy collects those seeds from the big box stores, and then we help to give those out to people in the community to use them. This is one of my babies from this past year. So our office is in the Montgomery County Government Center. I convinced them to let us put in some raised beds back there in the back between the school board entrance and then the employee entrance for the community or the government center. And so from those raised beds, I wanted to use this as a demonstration garden. And I have sign in there that we can change out the information throughout the year and kind of explain what we're growing, different things. Usually highlight some of the pests. I like to highlight the pests that we find there and then tell people how to help take care of those. And then the food that we grew here was used for some of our F&P programs, so some of those teaching demonstrations for cooking, as well as donated to the Meadowbrook Free Food Library. So this is just a little one pager that I put together about it. It's just 2 6.5 by 3 foot raised beds. And then I have the cattle panels put between them so that you can do some vertical growing. And this is just to show you can utilize a small area and still grow a pretty good amount of food. So we did this, and I'll just highlight, let's see, where we go. So yeah, we donated, it was only about 50 pounds to the pantry. But still that's 50 pounds more than they would have gotten. And that included cherry tomatoes, squash, our cool season crops. We did lettuce, turnips, radishes. And then we actually did a lot of basil and cilantro as well, because that's something that we don't think about, right? For like food pantries. Herbs, if you go to the store, those things are pretty expensive. And a lot of times they're not that fresh. So even getting to donate some of those was really cool. And then we went through our building and actually used it as kind of a marketing, I don't know, activity. I felt like a little Girl Scout going through with a wagon, but when you want to make those herbs bigger, you need to trim them. So we had all these pieces of herbs, so basil and cilantro. So we went through and we had some of those Eat Smart, Move More recipes from F&P that use those herbs so that people could get their own herbs clipping, whether they wanted to root it and start their own or just use it to cook with, and kind of introduced ourselves to the building. And so I guess, yeah, well, we did a follow-up survey on this demonstration garden because I had that sign out there. And we had 35 people who responded, which I was kind of surprised, to the survey. And 23% of them had never heard of Extension. And our office is in that building. So that was kind of a little sad, but at the same time, meant that what we were doing was necessary. But then also 86% of them said that just the having that garden out there and the amount of education on the signs, that it increased their knowledge, their gardening knowledge. I really loved this quote that we got back. I have gardened at both large and medium scale throughout my life. I currently live somewhere with limited available gardening space. Seeing your project's progression and productiveness throughout spring, summer has encouraged me to figure out how to maximize this small space I have beyond herb gardening. I plan to reconfigure next year. Thank you. So it was really neat to see how just having that demonstration garden could impact some folks. And then we had our Seed to Shelf series. This was with Dawn Barnes, our FCS agent. We had 7 in-person sessions, and we went through pretty much the whole range of growing your own food to preserving your own food. And they got to do some in-person hands-on activities with the canning. So we did dilly beans and then regular pressure canned green beans. So the dilly ones, you can do that with the water bath, right? Because you've got that high acid content. But it was a really great program, and we tried to kind of split it up between Christiansburg and more of that Eastern Montgomery to get some more folks to come to that. And then this is another baby of mine that I've been really excited about as far as from A&R and working with some food insecurity, but also with supporting our local producers. So this was a grant that I wrote in partnership with Ryan Martin from the Y at Virginia Tech. And we submitted it to VDAX last year. local supporting local from Montgomery County's fields to Montgomery County's families in need. So we were successful in getting $125,000 purely for the procurement of local produce and ground beef. So beef, like I mentioned earlier, is our largest commodity. So we wanted to go that route because we have a lot of producers that we could help and work with in that way. And then ground beef is something that you can get a lot of in large quantities. But it's also something that's easy for youth and seniors to cook safely. And then you can also do a lot of different options for meals, tacos, spaghetti, burgers, chili. So we wanted something that a lot of families could use. So we focused 100,000 on that and then 25,000 on produce. And so that 25,000, a lot of our vegetable producers have markets already for their really nice vegetables. But then they have seconds that just have little blemishes here and there. Still edible, still great and nutritious, but it might not be what certain people aesthetically want to buy. So we would purchase that from them. So this was all money going back to our local producers. And then all of this food is distributed through these organizations right here. These are certain, right now, we've had to expand a little bit out of Montgomery County because it's a lot of beef as far as our ground beef production. And so we've expanded a little further out into the NRV. We even have one from Lynchburg. And some of these may be able to provide like 100 or 200 pounds once or twice throughout the year. Some of them could easily provide all of it, but they want to spread the wealth, which I think is great too. So supporting more people. So it's supporting not only our local producers, but it's also supporting those in need in our county. And next year we're actually reapplying for this and up in the number and trying to expand to Giles and Pulaski as well. And then our master gardeners, which I'm sure most of you are more familiar with. I just want to highlight them because they are a huge force in the NRV and we really appreciate their work. So for this past year, we have 78 master gardeners from Montgomery County alone. I think we have about 19 trainees for this year. And then that 78 is out of 107 master gardeners in the NRV. So Montgomery County has a huge amount of volunteers here. We had 28,000 direct contacts, so that's face-to-face contacts with folks, and then 16,500 or so of indirect, so that's through phone calls, emails, people coming in, asking or reading articles and whatnot. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't know how much work.
Yeah, it was right. It was like 2 slides. That's it. So yeah. But just kind of sharing some of those numbers, and I'll fly through here. This is another part of the association awarded close to $8,000 for community projects from their plant sale. And then just if you want to find or keep up with us, we do have a Facebook page or 3. So we have one that kind of covers a lot of everything. And then we have specifically for H and then specifically for our Master Gardener Association. And then that's just my info. Yes. And like I said, just because I'm just producers, we're here for all of you. Yeah.
Any interest in butterflies?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we do all kinds of different programs looking at pollinators. We did a native pollinator walk 2 years ago with the HON. It's something that I want to do again. It probably won't happen this year. So I am 34 weeks pregnant right now. So I'll be taking maternity leave. But during like pollinator week, we did that. And I like to make sure that we feature some of those native pollinators as well. We haven't done something like that, but we do have, so the Virginia Cooperative Extension, and I should have put this here actually. Oh, yes. So is there any like information on propagation of milkweed to promote some of those pollinators? So Virginia Cooperative Extension has a website, and you can go and look up publications. They have so many different types of publications on so many different things. If they don't have one on that specific topic, an easy way to Google and get research-based information is to put in the topic you're wanting to know about. So you could put like propagation of milkweed and then follow it by extension. And you might get North Carolina State or Penn State has a lot of good ones. But you'll get some really good fact sheets that are easy, clear, and research-based as well.
Well, really my interest. Milk.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we could work on. So that's the thing is we're here to meet your needs. So if you have ideas of programs or certain areas that you're really interested in that we're not doing, that's the only way we know that you're interested if you let us know. And so that could be a really great master naturalist or master gardener program, or maybe together we can work on it.
That's actually something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we're about out of time. All the talk about gardening reminded me that we have sustainable gardens. We have a few gardens. We're looking for some more, hoping to bring back that tour. So maybe it was we were talking about too the bucket gardening. One of the gardens that was on our tour a couple years ago. It was great. It was a rental property and all raised beds and bags of soil with plants in it. It was really fabulous. So lots of great ideas out there. And I also just want to give you a little gift. This is a little shopping bag. When you open it, it's full size. So it looks really small, but anyway, we appreciate you being here and just want to give Meredith a hand. I don't know if you'll be here for a few minutes.
Yeah.
When you say garden, you speak visitors? Or-
Yes, exactly. It's kind of similar to the Master Gardener Library garden tour, but we do like once a month with just a couple of gardens. It's a free tour, but yes, people willing to let other people see what they're doing. And it's a shorter time period too, just a few hours instead of a full day. Well, it's through Sustainable Blacksburg, Sustainable Garden Tour. If you go to our website, you can see pictures from earlier tours. So growing food, native plants. We had a wide variety of different kind of sustainable practices that people were showing. I mean, your demonstration could actually be a good thing for people to see too, like what you can do in a small space.
The bug fencing intrigues me. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
how, like, it's so.
Oh,
Yeah,
super simple. And I was gonna just drag it from Southern States, which is right next to our building. And because I was like, I'll just have my car at that point. But it's super, that's the same setup. I had actually one of the pictures before of this Seed to Shelf series was from my backyard because we have an area that's not great for vegetable garden. We have water that comes off the mountain. So we do a lot of raised beds, and we had cattle panels laying around, so that's what I used. And it is so good for any kind of like tomatoes, cucumbers. Gourds. I did butternut squash that went insane over it. Sugar snap peas, anything that climbs, it's great. And it keeps it, I won't get into it, but I could talk about vertical gardening. So I used to work at Red Sun Farms in Dublin, and I did their IPM and their food safety and all of their compliance. And you can take that scale and put it in your own garden. And so I'm all about vertical gardening.
Yes. I need to finally get my soil tested too. I don't know. Thank you very much.
Yeah. hydroponics, so like as far as extension or, so extension does have a CEA, so they call it, it's and of course now I can't think of what that stands for, controlled environment ag, which is hydroponics, indoor ag. That's what I have experience with so yes, there's information. They're also kind of, it's a newer department, so they're kind of up and growing in their or their resources for citizens and producers and stuff. But it is something that we have our own area of experts on. So
We are the one.
yes, yep. And if it's something, I'm trying to think. They had a program more recently on some of that. But sometimes we could do something like a smaller scale hydroponic for homeowners. Yeah. Yeah, because it is one of those things that sometimes I've actually spoken to some of the specialists in that I'm like, I worked in such a high tech that sometimes downscaling that so far is a little tough for me. But not all of it is. Now, the IPM part of it, I can tell you all about that and beneficial insects and what insects that you might want to go the route of versus maybe ones to avoid. What's going to be the best